Has Pakistan done away with the default, or it is just a temporary relief? You don't need a journalist or an economic expert to answer this question. Just go down the street and ask any random passerby and he'll tell you that the country is not out of the woods yet, because a lot has been written about it, a lot has been said about it, and people are now very much aware of the situation, and they all know that this is the story that's been going on for years and years, that we go to IMF every 4 or 5 years to seek another bailout because we are not putting our house together in order. So if you look at current situation, I mean, the next 1 year your gross financing need, like the money you need to pay to international creditors, is around like 28 billion. And if you look at for like medium term target 3 years, I've read reports like 91 billion is what you require to pay in the next 3 years. So it's a huge amount. Where is this money going to come from? What have you got at the moment? Like 4.5 billion with the central bank, and another 3 billion coming from the IMF, and that again is subject to the reforms agenda that you have agreed with them, and they will give this money in installments. And as we have seen in the recent past, in fact over many years, that the IMF program can stall any time if you don't really deliver on your promises or reforms agenda. This is perhaps the reason why they are seeking endorsement from all political parties. So in case of a change in government, if a new political party takes leadership, so the IMF can pressurize them, sort of using the same endorsement that they're seeking right now, that you had agreed to it. So the reforms agenda must go on. So that could be the reason. So it's a huge amount in the next 1 year or even next 3 years. So the current amount that you have, like 4.5 billion central bank's reserve, 3 billion from the IMF's, assuming it will be given, and then you can reach out to friendly countries like China and Saudis. They'll give you a few more billions, but that's not enough. International bond market, international commercial loan market is shut on Pakistan. Firstly, the rates are too high. You just can't borrow on that rate because it will not be sustainable. Secondly, the country is literally bankrupt. Why would an international investor put his money into Pakistani market when he knows that he can make a decent return from US Treasury and or international bonds of the other issuers, which have better ratings, better credit ratings, and are less likely to default. So, and then other sources of foreign exchange like exports, you can't increase those, remittances. I mean, if you read international news, you may have an idea that the risk of a global recession hasn't really faded away yet, and there's a cost of living crisis going on here in the UK and pretty much across Europe, and inflation is running high. So this will definitely affect your exports, and this will definitely have an impact on your remittances. So where is this money going to come from? And your situation is very critical. If you look at your balance of payment situation, I'll give you an example. For like the current amount that we have is barely enough to provide you an import cover for 1 month, and that used to be like, that threshold used to be 3 months. I remember when I was in Pakistan in 2021 and I was doing economic reporting, like the alarm bells will go off. Oh, see, our foreign reserves are down to like 9 billion or 7 billion. That's barely enough for 3 months. Now it is down to like 4 billion. I mean, it has recently gone up. It was like, I think 4 billion, or maybe it fell below 4 billion at one point, and you hardly have enough dollars to pay for 1 month of imports. And that has been there for like many months. I don't remember because I'm not really closely following it, but this is the situation right now. From 3 months imports cover, you are now into 1 month import cover, because your balance of payment situation is very critical. Your debt, the mountain of debt you have is so huge that the debt servicing cost basically is not sustainable, because you have like, I haven't seen the recent numbers, but if say for example the next 3 years requirement is 90 billion, just going by 3% or 5% interest rate average, you can imagine that how much your debt servicing cost is every year. So this standby agreement with IMF basically means that you have bought more time to think about what you want to do long term, what reforms you can put in place, but that does not mean the country is out of the woods yet. And this basically means you have 9 months to sort of come up with a long-term reform agenda and plan to sort of deal with the crisis. And in a nutshell, I'd summarize the current situation as you can compare Pakistan's economy to a giant ship trapped in a storm about to hit a rock, and those on board are busy fighting over who takes the control rather than joining forces and steering it out of the danger. I can tell you that any quick fixes such as import controls or restrictions on the dollar outflows, they won't really help solve the problem unless you address the real issues. And again, everyone knows what the real issues are. I mean, you need to tax the people who are out of tax net. I don't want to name the sectors, everybody knows. We need to tax the agriculture sector, the retail sector. I mean, there's a lot of money in real estate. You need to extract taxes from there as well. And apart from that, you need to fix the loss-making government entities, either sell them or turn them around, and facilitate the business community, promote entrepreneurship, invest in infrastructure, which is super important, and allocate resources to the right sectors, to the right areas, not just without any planning. The sector that have potential to increase exports, for example. And above all, very important, provide security. So the list goes on, and I have done a lot of interviews highlighting all these issues, both on fiscal and external side, and they're still available on my YouTube channel. And I think a lot of people have done this. I think there's a lot of content out there on the internet that people can consume to understand what the real issues are, so I don't want to go into the details. But there's another important point I want to make here, especially regarding the external side, because the balance of payment crisis, the mountain of debt, and the debt servicing cost, which is very much unsustainable. This is what basically brings us back to IMF every time. So there's high time, I think Pakistan needs to think about restructuring its debt. But then again, the key question is, what do we have to offer the world, especially the creditors, to go and get their consent on a debt restructuring? Because the current debt structure is not sustainable. It's a very, very high cost of debt servicing, because the amount of debt is so much that even in interest payments you end up spending so many dollars, and you don't really have any sustainable inflows of dollars, whether it's exports, whether it's remittances or foreign investments. I mean, what to talk of that. But so this is not sustainable. You need to think about that restructuring, and then think about what you can offer to the world, because creditors will need something in return if they want to give you any concessions in the restructuring. And the possibilities include like reducing the size of debt, or giving you concession in terms of lowering the interest rate, or maybe extending the maturities, giving you more time to pay your debt, so that in the meantime you can come up with a long-term strategy, overall your economic model, and steer the country out of crisis.